Hi, my name is Christine Fraser, and I'm a golf course architect.
I mean, the game is an amateur game. I mean, the professional side of it, there are idols and heroes and fun to watch them play. But I mean, if it wasn't for amateur golf, there would be no golf.
On a nice day, it's very scoreable, and you go play it on a 15, 20 mile an hour day, and you're hanging on to your pants. And I think I love that about that style of golf, link style of golf.
You have to remember, when you play a golf course and you're out there for 4 hours or whatever, you're only hitting a ball for 15 minutes of that. So there's a lot of time to look around.
Hello and welcome to the Top 100 Clubhouse. I'm James Henderson, your host, and I'm also joined by a Top 100 staffer in the editor-in-chief in Jasper Miners. If you haven't listened to last week's episode on the pod, you should do so, because Jasper gives an amazing insight into what he's got planned for the top100golfcourses.com. It's very exciting stuff for something that we all know and love. The main guest, though, this week, and one of the most interesting interviews I've done in a long time, is Christine Fraser. It's very rare that Jasper and myself have our eyes open to a world of golf course architecture we never really thought about. But Christine is focusing on community and accessibility in golf course architecture and golf courses, golf clubs, golf everything. And I think it's a bit of an eye-opener for us, and I hope you guys feel the same way too. So, Christine, as we all like to do, we would like to start with, where did it all start with you? How did golf become a thing for you?
Yeah, I have some of my earliest core memories were sitting on my grandfather's suitcase in his old pickup truck, driving out for a day of work at the golf course. My grandparents had this kind of crazy idea to buy a 120-acre cornfield in the 70s and turn it into a golf course. So my grandparents and their 3 children, one of them being my mother, literally built a golf course from the ground up, and it's still owned and operated by the family today. So, I mean, all of my very early memories were just, mucking around at the golf course as a kid with my brother and my mom. All of our summer holidays were spent out there, and my mom would say she would be in the pro shop opening up at 5:30, ready for the first tee time, and she would say, I don't want to see you until my shift ends at 4, and don't bother the golfers. So we had this incredible utopia of just being able to explore and try new things and create our own adventure on the playing field of a golf course, which was really magical as a young child.
So, was the golf course designed by your grandparents?
It was, yeah. And it's absolutely fascinating because they're not golfers. My grandmother is Scottish, which is about the closest thing she gets to being a golfer. Um, but apart from that, they just thought it was a really nice business model, especially in Canada, to be able to work really hard during those, 8 months of the year where you can play golf, and then have 4 months off to travel and spend time with family and do other things. So just the business model really appealed to them. And golf was quite popular at that time. And it was something that the whole family could do together and work at together and create this really wonderful dynamic for generations of our family.
So I can imagine that's quite inspirational for why you're doing what you're doing now.
Yeah, I think subconsciously I grew up in that kind of very public type of golf course. There's no frills, no irrigation on the fairways, no bunkers, just, a really kind of down to earth golf course, which was what I knew. I didn't see another golf course until I was probably, 16 years old. So that was the type of golf that I knew, where people were allowed to wear what they wanted um, and do what they liked, and treat it as their own community center in a way.
So what was your favorite tasks when you're put to work in the summers?
Every single job that you can think of at a golf course, I've done it. I mean, I think my first job was bagging tees, as I'd get paid 10 cents a bag because we'd buy them in huge boxes because it was cheaper that way. And then we had to individually bag them to then sell to the customer. So I have a really fond memory of just, bag counting and bagging 10 teas at a time to sell in the pro shop. But I've I've really done it all. I've worked outside, which was probably my favorite, just kind of getting into the more of the sciencey side of what's underneath the grass was really always really interesting to me. And still to this day, like, I don't think there's anyone who can find a golf ball in the woods or in the tall grass better than me, because I just, I have a lot of practice. That was, how I made money as a kid. Just go find golf balls and sell them back to people.
So you obviously played a lot as a kid if you were growing up on a golf course like that. You ended up going to university to play golf. What was that as an experience from kind of that setting to go play these higher end tier golf courses?
Yeah, it was, I kind of came about it in a really unorthodox way. I was a hockey player first and foremost, ice hockey.
Like all Canadians.
Absolutely. It's, part of our DNA. And I kind of had, obviously, because I was around golf so much, I was very comfortable with it. But I didn't really come to competitive golf until very late. And competitive being like my kind of local city circuit was about all I could manage. If I broke 90, I was happy with that. I had signed to go play hockey on a scholarship at my local university. So, I was all in on hockey. Went down to Florida for March break. And we went to a flea market. And I was hitting balls into the net at the flea market, trying their used clubs. And the guy who was running the stall was like, "Oh, hey, do you go to Stetson University? You have a nice swing." And I was like, "No, I mean, what's Stetson University?" And he's like, "It's a Division I school just around the corner. They have a great golf team. You should maybe reach out to them." And I did that, and it was kind of like from March to the start of term in August, I had kind of done this complete 180 of leaving hockey behind, leaving Canada behind, writing my SATs, applying for the school, getting my visa, getting the funding, and taking this like massive leap of faith to move to a different country and play a sport that I, really wasn't familiar with in that context of like very high end competitive golf. So it was a culture shock, to say the least.
Particularly in Florida as well, where it's taken very seriously.
Yeah. It was, very much a different world that I was quite naive to.
What was the golf courses like that you played when you were at Stenson? What was there any ones that you found inspirational?
Yeah, I remember my first year, a trip to Pinehurst, and that was one of the first times that I saw a golf course that I had never seen before. And that was really impactful for me. I mean, just the smells were different. The compaction of the soil was different. The undulations were different. It was so fascinating. It was absolutely captivating to me to see something like that. So we stayed on the property and we played a bunch of golf, and it was just in that moment I was like, "Ooh, this is cool," because I kind of found out through my experience at university that playing golf didn't interest me very much. I happened to be able to be quite good at it just because of my upbringing and my access to golf. But I didn't love it. I really didn't love it at all. But what I did love was traveling to these different places and playing in the mountains of Tennessee and the acidic soil of Pinehurst and the Bermuda grass of Florida. That was the part that really was fascinating.
I know we'll quickly just want to touch on a notice how cool was looking at the US Open at Pinehurst and seeing all this brown ground. You never see that. You never see that in American golf. It was so cool to see, and people get inspired by that.
I couldn't take my eyes off it. I was absolutely captivated the whole tournament, and that's pretty rare for me for the PGA Tour. So I was just, I loved it.
Yeah, they've done a brilliant job there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So what did you study when you were at university?
Yeah, it was mostly golf. I mean, I studied business law and sport management. I thought I wanted to be some kind of hockey agent, just I was still in that mindset of hockey was what I wanted to do. So when I was deciding what program to take, I thought maybe that would be cool. Um, but but yeah, I stuck it out with that degree, and I have a bunch of minors because I found I had a lot of time somehow. So yeah, I just tried a bunch of things.
And then after that, what was next?
After I played my last competitive round in my senior year, we made it. It was the first year we won our conference, so we made it onto regionals. And I remember like playing that last round and being like, "Wow, I am so excited to never play golf again." So happy, so relieved, so free that I don't ever have to play golf again if I don't want to. So that was a pretty intense turning point in my life of who am I without this golf piece attached to me, and in that way. So I was happy to leave my clubs behind. I joked and saying I was retired at 21. But really kind of at that point knew that playing golf wasn't for me. I didn't have the mindset for it. I maybe had the raw talent, but I didn't have the mental capacity. I didn't have the drive to be really good at golf. So I knew golf was going to be in my life forever, but probably not in that capacity. So I started really having to think about what was next for me in terms of a career, and I kind of forgot about being an agent for a hockey player. That was kind of long gone as well. So it was a really nice fresh start actually, and just at that age where you're really getting to know yourself and what you like and who you are and what you want to be. So that was a pretty intense phase of discovery for me.
So then landscape architecture took your fancy. Why was that? What drove you there?
Yeah, I had felt I had come such a far distance from that idyllic childhood upbringing on a golf course, that I like had almost forgot about what I loved about golf. And I remember reading an article in Golf Digest or something, during one of those travel days, on the way to a tournament. And it was about this exciting new golf course that was once a gravel mine that's being turned into a US Open venue. And I remember reading that article and I'm like, of course, this is, what I want to do. I want to do that. I want to turn a gravel quarry mine into a US Open venue. And from that, like, it was literally that moment of, I have a vision, I have a goal, I have an objective, I can very clearly see my future in this space, in this golf industry that I have loved so much. I felt like I could find a space there.
Jasper, question time. What golf course is it?
I'd say Whistling Straits, yeah.
It's Chambers Bay.
Chambers Bay, yeah, good.
There you go.
Yeah. How many more is
sorry,
there?
Sorry,
Erin Hills as well? No, my knowledge of US Open venues in America is quite limited, so that was a wild guess on my part.
Mine's rubbish too. Maybe I'll what I'll do is I'll cut that bit out and just get people to try and guess it. And right,
yeah,
okay.
There you go.
So
yeah, no, that's good. Yeah.
So you're doing landscape architecture. Was that? Where did you do that? And why landscape architecture? Was it because you wanted to work in golf, or because you thought working with the land was the thing you wanted to do?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I think I knew I wanted to be a golf course architect, and I knew there was a few different routes to get into that. They had just stopped doing the EIGCA program. I had just kind of stopped being in person in Edinburgh, so that was kind of out. I knew you could take a construction lens and go and work on a construction crew and learn how to literally build a golf course from the ground up. And I knew there was a more academic approach, which was for me, which is what I chose, which was getting a master's in landscape architecture. And I thought that marrying that competitive experience with the academic lens of landscape architecture was the correct thing to do. And I think, if I'm being completely candid, thought that if a career in golf course architecture didn't work out, I would have landscape architecture to fall back on, which I still thought was moderately interesting.
Someone told me there's more astronauts who make it than golf course architectures. So
yeah,
you can't. It's a tough industry. It's a really tough industry, and
yeah. I started my graduate program in 2011, so that was kind of anyone I talked to was like, golf architecture is just really, the odds are not in your favor. So it was a lot of sort of noise to push through and reality checks, and I felt like having a backup plan was a smart thing to do.
I know you went on after to work with Hawtree, but I would like to know how that came around. What was the instigator for that?
So during the third year of my master's degree, you have to write a thesis, and so it's very few classes. It's mostly just a research year, so you're just studying. And I wrote my thesis obviously on golf, and very specifically golf architecture. And I was given a scholarship by the Stanley Thompson Society. Stanley Thompson is a very prolific Canadian golf architect. And I took that money and I went to Scotland and I played golf and I called it data collection for my thesis. And that was the first time I had ever been to Scotland. The first time I played a links golf course. The Royal Dornoch was the first links golf course I've ever played, and basically, changed my life during those.
It's not a bad start.
4 hours. Yeah. It really just literally altered my brain chemistry. And I was mid-20s, first time in Scotland, driving on the wrong side of the road by myself, solo trip, going to St. Andrews, Royal Dornoch, North Berwick. And I also went to this really cool, new, exciting golf course that was all the buzz in the industry at the time, which was Trump Aberdeen. It had just been built, just opened, so I wanted to go and see that as well. So I that was on my list to hit up on that research trip. So I met with the superintendent, and during our interview, he's like, I have to take this phone call. I'm sorry, I have to take this phone call. And I had seen on his display that it was Martin Hawtree that was calling. And of course, because I was doing all of this research for my thesis, I had studied the Hawtree, legacy firm with his father and his grandfather. The Hawtree name came up many, many times in my research, so I knew exactly who Martin Hawtree was. And when he got off the phone, I kind of geeked out a little bit. I was like, was that the Martin Hawtree? You're just talking to, that's so amazing. I would, and John Banbury, who was the superintendent at the time at Trump Aberdeen, said, I can put you in touch if you want, if you seem pretty keen. And so he did that. And it was this wonderful serendipitous moment of all of these pieces coming together at this precise point that literally changed the course of my career. So Martin and I got in touch, and he said, I'm going to be in Canada next month. I'm working on a golf course there, Toronto Golf Club. Why don't you come and we meet? And we kept in touch. And after I graduated, he offered me a job.
Wow.
And I said, yes, please. Thank you.
It's not a bad place to meet to get a job offer as well.
Yeah, special place.
There's so when he offered you the job, how did you react? What was going through your mind? Where were you thinking, oh, I know I've got to move to the UK, or now I've got to? What was the thought process?
I was terrified. I mean, and also also like, this is the biggest opportunity of my life. I never asked about the salary. I never asked about, where I was going to live or how I was going to get there, or, I had never been to England before. I really know nothing about Martin Hawtree's firm. So it was just a massive leap of faith, I think, on both of our sides, Martin's as well. Yeah, probably, some of the best years of my professional life were spent in that firm in Woodstock, Oxfordshire.
So I've got a few questions on this, because obviously Martin Hawtree is a very significant figure within the UK golf sphere, well, world's golf sphere, and the Hawtree family, full stop. So firstly, what was it like working at the Hawtree firm?
Yeah, it's like you just walked into a museum in a way, just because of the legacy. I mean, the firm had its centenary many years ago, so it's very, very important and historic and deep in terms of access to plans and specifically access to very important architectural golf courses within the UK. I mean, Martin was the consulting architect for the R&A for many years, so he had access to Birkdale and St Andrews and some really incredible places. And so it was really kind of a full dive headfirst into very traditional forms of golf architecture, very foundational philosophies and theories and design, a reverie for the old greats, Colt and Allison, Kenzie, and all of these names that weren't very familiar to me became part of my vocabulary very quickly.
Well, you're preaching to the choir with Jasper. He's an absolute Colt nerd.
Oh yeah,
well,
we love some Colt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, he is possibly one of the greatest. He is arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time. So it's hard to not love him, right?
Absolutely.
On that point of all the historic stuff, because majority of golf course architects nowadays just won't have that ability to be able to tap into these very historic drawings. And I know Jasper is a golf historian in a lot of ways, and does a lot of work for quite a few of the famous golf courses in the UK. Being able to just research this stuff before you go into a golf course must give you a level of understanding that not many other firms would be able to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, plans for Sunningdale and Lahinch and, Shanti and Dukes and, really like any course you could think of. If Martin didn't work on it, he could get me on it, So I could just, go over to New Zealand on the weekend and have a look around, and, just access to these places to really start to build up my reference book was so valuable during those 5 years.
Does what do you think in the Hawtree firm? Do you think you learned from them that you wouldn't have learned from anyone else?
I tend
question, sorry.
to, yeah. I tend to, that's such a good question.
It's hard to know.
I think I gained a true appreciation for golf architecture during those 5 years as not necessarily an art, but as a practice, and as a craft that you can continue to refine. Very specific elements of golf architecture that are incredibly important to anyone who's interested in the industry. And just having access to the entire process of seeing someone who has gone through the entire process of a project from start to finish and everything that involves was fascinating. So just in the artistic process of literally designing a golf hole, there's, the first draft, the second draft, all the way up to the final draft, which is 10 drafts later. Seeing that process and having the records to go through those processes was really fascinating for me, because, it's really, how do you become a golf architect? I don't I don't know. I actually have no idea. It's a lot of intuition. It's a lot of just like being exposed to these things. So having the ability to just be exposed to all of these, 100 years of golf architecture, I think was unique to the Hawtree firm and extremely valuable in forming the foundation of my design preferences.
I would like to get onto your design preferences in a bit, but one thing I would like to ask before we move on is what aspect of Martin Hawtree's approach to the game what qualities do you take and go, this is like Tom Doak's course routing is a lot of, people talk about it being the greatest ever. What was Martin's approach that you would want to take away, the skill that he had that you thought was something that you wanted?
Yeah, I have so much admiration for Martin. What he was so good at was, seeing a problem, and there's a very obvious option A solution and an option B solution. And Martin would be able to, we discussed with the superintendent, with me, with the other architects, with the pro, and it was like option A or option B. These will solve the problem. And Martin was always very good at taking the time to find option C and present option C in a way that was, really intentional, really thoughtful, and ultimately which kind of separated him from other architects. So he really instilled in me, of course, it's so instinctual. This process of golf architecture is so subjective and instinctual and abstract in a way, but to always take the time to find that option C.
Well, you hear of many golf course architects being quite single-minded or what do you call it? Single-minded, and it's my way or the highway, because obviously when you finish a golf course design or an edit on a golf course or restoration, it's your name that's going to be associated with it. So these are your calling cards, your business cards. So you can understand why people are very protective over their work.
Yeah, you can, and it's easy, I think, to fall into that headspace because it is such a competitive and cutthroat industry, and you don't have a lot of opportunities to show off in a way. And Martin was incredibly humble and very genuine, and I think his golf courses reflect that.
Okay, so moving on from Martin, I do have one last question about your time at Hawtree. Golf courses you worked on. Hit me. What was your favorite? What changes did you do that really inspired you?
Oh my God, I spent like 8 weeks living in Tralee in Ireland, building a little 6-hole members little loop for them. And I mean, Ireland changed my life. I spent 8 weeks building 3-hole loop at Shanty, which is Tom Simpson. That changed my life. I mean, I spent 3 months at the Toronto Golf Club building a 9-hole golf course there. That changed my life. So these experiences that were afforded to me during my time with Hawtree really have stayed with me, and I think will for a long time. And one of the benefits of living in the UK is, you can hop over to Paris for the weekend on the Eurostar, and then you can, go over to Wales the next weekend. You just have access to all of these places. So I think that's really what I take away with me from those 5 years over there, is just being able to have these experiences outside of golf that are incredibly refreshing and revitalizing and important to me.
It's really interesting because I know that those experiences probably affected you quite personally to develop your own ethos and brand of golf architecture that I know you're very proud of now. How long did it take you to form those ideas?
I think 5 years. I mean, the whole time I think I was learning from Martin. I'm a good listener. I like to observe things. I'm like that true look-upper in all facets of my life. And I think I was able to take so many things from my time over there that I love, that I think about every day in my design practice, and and also and also gather things that I was very intentional of leaving behind. Um, and I think those two things combined really help form my ethos and what's important to me today, and what I'm trying to do in making golf accessible, and really including different perspectives in the game, which is probably what I brought to the firm with Martin, was just, I was a bit of a different perspective.
So I don't think we've actually touched fully on what your design perspective is. So give us the elevator pitch for
Okay.
what do you do? If I was a golf club, if I was a GM listening, what would be your, what sell me?
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have any interest in designing a top 100 golf course. I think there's a time and a place for that, but it's not really what gets me fired up. I want to take a old Muni that's downtown Toronto and give it a facelift and give the community access to it, and see how many people I can invite to the game, and include in the game. And I suppose it's creating these spaces for people to really be themselves and feel welcome in golf in a way that, I did as a child, to create that kind of environment that allows people to feel quite held by their community and by the game and by the environment, by the surroundings. And just I guess I'm doing all of this for my 8-year-old self, basically. It's the most selfish reason to do this, but those were, very formative years of my life, and I think golf has this incredible potential to create that for people, if they have access to it.
Completely agree. I know there's a very famous developer of golf courses in Scotland right now. I won't name names but that he's traveling around playing all Gullin 3, Kilspindie, all the shorter golf courses of Scotland, because he believes there's a future in that across the as a public access space across America.
Yeah, and that.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I loved so much about golf in the UK. Golf in the UK felt more like a service to the community, whereas golf in North America is more of a business. And so that community piece that you see so often in the UK at anywhere, like St. Andrews is a great example, but also some of the courses that you mentioned, the kids course at Berwick, or some of these really interesting pieces that are more of a service to the community. That's kind of what I am interested in, what I get excited about, and seeing how many other weirdos I can convince to play golf.
It is cool having. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was going to ask Christine. It's an interesting one, because you can tell that you've got a side of you when you start talking about places like Dornoch and the Old Course, and you talked about Pinehurst. The change from playing, probably courses in Florida, and then you get to go to Pinehurst, and there's just something different about it. It smells different, plays different, the turf is different. It's on another level. So you've got that side of yourself that really appreciates like really high end architectural merit, whether it's in America, Scotland, England, whatever it might be. And then to make the same comment of whether I build one that will ever be named alongside as a peer, perhaps, of the courses mentioned, there's a different tack to it. So how do you find marrying those two? Are they complementary? Are they contradictory? Or to this point, have we've not found a model of bringing perhaps the democratized game of Scotland to maybe America or even south of the border? It's just a different game in Scotland, isn't it, compared to even England?
It really is. And I think that you've kind of articulated that juxtaposition so well. And I resonate with that. I feel like that describes so much of my experience in golf, of loving it so much and wanting it to love me back, and it doesn't always do that. Because I'm a woman, because I have tattoos, because I don't look the same as everyone else, because of whatever reason it is. It's always that push pull that I have within myself, my love hate relationship with golf, um, that I've come across so many times in my life, and so I find that that's just the place that I live in. And I think that's part of the motivating piece, which makes me want more of golf, wants golf to be better in these ways, to actually create that space where these juxtaposing views marry together and enhance each other rather than repel each other.
Yeah, it's an interesting take. And do you think that maybe there is the ability, so obviously, to maybe take someone who doesn't feel like they belong, or fit the mold, but they can
Mm.
find a common space, maybe in golf. I mean, to speak about myself, is true too. Sometimes you go to these old clubs, especially in England, and you haven't gone to the right school, and I don't have the right tie, and my socks aren't the right color, and you kind of have to, where do you fit and how do you fit in? Um, but actually, the common thread is just a love for the game,
Mm.
and all those things just kind of melt away. So it's a very interesting ethos of how to do it, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have to do one at the expense of the other, which is a
No, I
very
agree. I
interesting thing.
agree. I agree.
Yeah, 100%. It's one of those things. But I would like to touch on it because when you're presenting to a board of members, or sending out application with your alternative style compared to a guy in a suit jacket and a tie, the fact you're female just does matter to
Mm.
a lot of these old boys, which is very sad to start off with. But what would be the frustrations of the general opinion of these boards when you turn up and say, this is what I think would suit you guys as a club, and this is my proposal? Do you think they just aren't looking the right way? Because you'll have a board that are all 70 who want a championship golf course and can't hit the ball 200.
Mm.
So that must really frustrate you arriving in these rooms and seeing this.
I'm really good at pissing off old white men. It's like a particular talent of mine. um, um, yeah, I think with my tattoos and opinions, but that's fine. But I think there's space for it, particularly in North America, which is part of the reason that I came back here and thought that I could make space for myself here. Is that it, there's a palpable shift within golf because of our tendencies in society have made it so. Um, the easiest way for me to sell it is that we're here to make sure we have membership for the next 50 years, and it is a business after all. And so if we can bring in more women and cater to more people of color and the BIPOC community and juniors, and essentially if we can start people playing golf earlier and have them play golf into their better years longer, then that's good for everybody. So that's the way that I spin it, and that usually makes sense because it's just objective data. Um, but within that, we're creating spaces for women and for juniors and for people who don't necessarily think that this particular golf space can be theirs.
So if you're approaching a golf club, what steps do you take to make that space more comfortable, particularly on the golf course?
I think to simplify it, it's just about fun, having fun. Fun for everybody is a little bit different. So just creating the medium for people to enjoy themselves however they choose. A lot of the times it's just creating something that's a little bit more playable without making it too easy for the better player. So I think that's what golf architects try to do all the time. It's very common. It's like, let's make it more playable for the higher handicaps, and let's retain the challenge for the better players, the lower handicaps. So that's, that there's nothing revolutionary about that. There's really nothing that I'm doing that's any kind of, any kind of revolutionary architecture. It's just applying traditional golf architecture methods through a different lens. So making sure that there's equity from forward tee to the back tee. So if it's your dog leg left from the back tee, we want it to be a dog leg left from the forward tee. We want everyone to be able to experience the same thing in the same way and give them the opportunity to create their own fun.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just trying to comprehend. It's so true though. If you go to the old courses like St Andrews, and you can run into every green, so you can play longer shots.
Well, that's why St Andrews is the best golf course in the world, because the top 100 players go out and play it during the Open, and then the following Monday, our grannies are out on the first tee playing exactly the same golf course. That's why we love it. It's so inclusive. It's so equitable. It's so fun. It's so varied.
So I've got a double question that I just want to try and. I'm going to ask it. Might be rubbish, but fine. We'll see what happens. But firstly, is there a fine balance between getting that difficulty for good golfers and a decent challenge for the not so good golfers? And also, when did the change happen when that people, obviously in the golden age of architecture, cared about that, and that there was a sudden shift, particularly in the North America area, that kind of stopped appreciating that design method?
Second part of the question, I think Augusta had a lot to do with that, in terms of just the aesthetic appeal of Augusta when it started to be broadcast in the 50s, of this is what a good golf course looks like, and this is what we should be aspiring to. And that sort of worthy of emulation question comes to the forefront of my mind, of getting away from more strategic, browned out UK type golf and toward a more traditional North American look. Does that resonate? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Here, trust me, I'm very much on the same page as you. I think following Augusta is a great way of going out of business. There's very few places in the world.
Is, yeah.
There's very few places in the world that can afford to do that.
Yeah, and I mean, Augusta is Augusta, and we love it because it is. But that doesn't mean that everybody else needs to be Augusta. There's a time and a place for that. Remind me the first part of the question, James.
I'm not going to lie to you, I've forgotten. Do you remember, Jasper? Oh yeah, no, the fine line between making
it playable for the higher handicapper and the lower.
Yeah, to be honest, I mean, I don't really, I care less about the lower handicapper, like just because I do, because I think they've been cared about for so much for so long that we don't need more people to be caring about them. They have their golf courses already. They have their, if they want to be super challenged, they have a place to go to do that. But the other end of the spectrum, people don't always have a place to go that's super playable, that isn't penal, that's fun, that's accessible. Especially from the adaptive needs community, there's a very particular set of design elements that they need to be able to play golf, and you can't just get that anywhere. So I think my focus on the other end of the spectrum of creating accessible, fun golfing experiences is of more value to the community than focusing on challenging the better golfer.
It's someone asked me about it because I was chatting about you the other week, and I think it's something like 3% of people break, or 4% of people break 80 regularly, you know? So the number of people actually good enough to play these top golf courses is very low. And so, because I started off by saying you were doing a more niche style of design, but it's the opposite of that. The niche is actually the low handicapper.
That's exactly it. But they have so many opportunities to go and find golf that is correct for them. But the other way, it's just like completely turning it on its head of just like recalibrating the demographic of golfer that actually exists in North America or in the UK and creating something that's suitable for them.
So could I ask Christine, like, just an interesting question then? So from like an architectural point of view, so like, let's say you get a parcel of land, and okay, so you've seen Trump International, you know, in its virgin state, you know, as Martin's like, you know, carving up the dunes and laying out the holes and all the rest of it. And obviously the brief that was no doubt given to him was they wanted a championship, quote unquote, championship test. You know, let's say there is a world that exists in some parallel universe where the brief was, you know, Christine, we just want you to do what you do. There's your plot of land, crack on. What design elements would be similar or different? Or is there something that you would look at and say, actually, to cater to these niches that collectively become a sizable majority, and actually, as the point that James just made, is a sizable chunk of the golfing public, how would your approach to that design differ, do you think, than what many architects would do?
I think we're in a good place because links golf generally does that in a very good way, just kind of naturally, of being firm and fast, and the bump and runs are important. Contouring is important, so you get a little bit more yardage when you need it, but you also have to consider your angles into the green if you're looking to make a birdie. So links golf just does that really well naturally. But I think my first question, or my first thought, would be, who am I designing for? And rather than designing for them, try to in a way design with them, and invite members of the community into that space to make their contribution and have a bit of ownership over design, and see what people will be using the golf course for, because it's not necessarily golf or just golf. So there's a component to it that I think, you know, if we're spending all of this time and money and creative input into just making a golf course, like, that's not enough for me. It doesn't excite me. I don't think it's worth the land use or the water consumption or any of these things. I think there has to be a stronger argument to why this golf course should be being built, and a lot of the times that comes with multi-use elements, but a lot of the times it just comes with, hey, let's improve our mental health. Let's go out and just, you know, be vulnerable and play with people we don't know and meet new people. And so I think there's elements to this experiential or look uppers within golf that I would try to cater to. So not necessarily just looking at the golf hole itself, but looking at the walks between the holes, or the sounds that you're hearing, or providing spaces where you can sit and chat, and connect, and doing all of that while going back to the foundations of golf architecture that I was taught so well. So you can still have a great golf course, but you can also have a great experience.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, brilliant. Love it.
Yeah, very interesting. And out of interest, this may sound, I'm just going to go for it. What features do you take into consideration that you should not have in a golf course for someone who is unable to isn't able-bodied?
Yeah, steps up to tees, not great. you really have to consider how people are accessing areas of the golf course. So the solo riders and the pair golfers, which are the buggies that people tend to use to get around the golf course, they have a specific incline and they max out at. You see it a lot down in Florida where you have curbs along cart paths the entire length of the hole. So it becomes challenging and time consuming to just access where they need to be. So thinking about just access points is really important. And also like, again, I mean, I don't have the answers for everything, but what I can fall back on is designing with people and not for them. So that's kind of like really at the core of what the service I can provide is, because I don't pretend to know to have all of the answers to these different golf courses in different climates with different memberships and different expectations. So I always go back to designing with, and that generally helps me in the process.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is clubs, right? If you have a proper club where it's run by the membership's going to say yes or no. And if you don't sit down with them and make those decisions with them, then you're probably going to get a no.
Yeah, that's it.
Happens all the time, unless you've got a big name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fascinating to me because you've turned things on its head. I've never really thought about golf course architecture through that lens before. But actually, like, what makes, like, just going back to St. Andrews, like, you play St. Andrews, and it's like, well, you're sharing the green with like another group that's coming through, and you might have went left and they went right, and you have to wait for each other, and you've got to play crisscrossing shots, and they're putting and you're chipping in. But is that social interaction as well? That's an element of what makes St. Andrews so well, is that there is a social interaction to the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So there's all those little elements that almost imperceptibly add up to an element that many golf course architects probably don't necessarily consider because they're really worried about all the other things that we're told we should be thinking about.
Yeah, for sure. And it's really easy to get lost in that. And there's in architecture across the board, building architecture, urban planning, there's architecture is the tool that you use to either bring people together or to create separation. And like that's the kind of line that I find really interesting, and applying that to golf architecture in a way to bring people together is the side that I like heavily lean toward.
It's crazy, actually, thinking about it. There's all these legal actions you have to take. Legal, so it'd be ramps into buildings. All these things that you have to do for in architecture. Why is it not in golf course?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, your clubhouse has to adhere to all of these ADA guidelines and standards and parking spaces, and but the second you arrive at the first tee, all of those are gone, and it just it becomes very challenging to know what to do. And
And actually, what's amazing about it is like all the things that you say, hey, curbs on cart pass, steps up to tee boxes. It's like, actually, either we have to change those elements or we lose them completely. And then you start to get back to like bare bones architecture that works really, really well the way that it has worked for hundreds of years in Scotland. And you're like, wait a minute, we've kind of come full circle using completely different element things, but what actually makes for good golf ends up being the motivator that produces it. Yeah.
A lot of golf courses are getting rid of, are trying to get rid of steps as much as they can right now. There's a lot of grass paths being laid in Scotland to try and into tees, not because of this, but because that's what it historically was. It's restorational, which I just thought it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you would like to say to our following on yourself or on your design philosophy that you think you haven't got across yet?
No, I think I really enjoyed our chat. I mean, you tell me, do you know my ethos a little bit better at this point?
Yeah, very much so. I think it's fascinating. It's like so. I know for a fact that both Jasper and I are anoraks. We're nerds on golf courses. We look at things, and you're making us look through a different lens, as to steal Jasper's phrase earlier,
Yeah.
which is something that I don't think ever happens to Jasper, and it's very, very rarely happens to me, where we're looking at golf at a different angle.
Yeah, I mean, like, how does it rate on the scale of 1 to 10, or how does it feel, and why does it feel that way? And yeah, just I think it's more
I'll answer.
interesting.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I mean, you're right. It's you could read all the books, and I've got them all, and you spend time in the presence of, for you, Martin Hawtree, or for me, like the Brian Schneiders of the world, or whoever it might be, where you look up to these, men, women, and you think, wow, that's a great mind for golf, and you consider and that's one thing too, I think, is beyond architecture, you start to get into art, the art of golf course design. But actually, at the core of a lot of these things, it's like, how much do we actually just enjoy it? And I found it really fascinating that your maybe primary motivator for doing what you do and producing what you do is not necessarily, I want to have a spot on a rank somewhere and have other people applaud like how good they think my work is, but actually I want to create something where other people can just be involved with one another and safe and enjoy it and welcomed, and actually that they're both two very different roads and motivators, but actually they should lead to very much the same place if they're both done really well. And that was
That's
completely new for
exactly
me.
it. Yeah.
I've never seen it through that way. Yeah. So I'm just kind of like, I was a bit blown away, really. But like, hey, how did we end up here? And we're like, wait a minute.
Yeah, full circle moment.
Yeah, it's really good. Really good.
Good.
Yeah,
well, I feel really good about it.
Well,
I mean, our chat.
It's really cool. It's you don't. That's the cool thing about golf architecture. It's you could have every book and know nothing about it, or not be able to walk onto a golf course and rate a golf course or understand
That's exactly
its
it. Yeah. You got it.
It's an art form. It's just like, I find all Goya's later stuff terrifying, but some people love it.
So here's a question for you, Christine. Do you think that there was so our stories have similar in the sense that I grew up playing in Western Canada. I played at a municipal golf course, 9 holes. I still love it, but I think it's to do not with the architectural merit of it, but simply because that's where you grew up and played, and you spent countless hours there. And then I started playing at some of the top tier, I was told were the top tier golf courses in Western Canada, resort courses that were designed by, all the big names that you would expect of the day in the 90s and early 2000s. And I got so bored and sick of golf that I just walked away from it.
Yeah.
But then he came back, quote unquote, to the UK and kind of fell in love with golf again. So I guess my question is, do you think that the quality of golf has a lot to do with how inspired not only people that perhaps don't feel part of the bigger, like, that fit into the societal norms, as you've mentioned previously, but the fact that good golf can bring together people and maybe inspire them to find a love. So instead of looking at things that divide us, I'm a woman, you're a man, I've got tattoos, you don't. I come from this class and you're not, and I went to this school, but you go to that school. but actually put all of that aside and I'll just meet you at the course at 3:00 after school and we'll go and have some fun.
Yeah, and I think that's what golf needs, and I think that's what our society needs in this point in time. That's exactly it. That's the very simply put, the only reason why I give so much of my time and thought and creative output to golf is because I truly believe that this is more than just a sport, and in one small way, it will just make us more human.
Well, it's interesting because I texted my sister and the other half earlier, just been like, right, I've got these questions on being female in a male-dominated space, and I know you've done other interviews around that, so or not all around it, but heavily around that. And I was just thinking, what's the point in asking this? It's not a female golf architect; it's a golf architect.
Mm.
And that's why I wanted to just I got rid of them all because there's literally that's not a thing. It's not. It's
Yeah, and like I appreciate that thought process that you went through, and I get I get the questions all the time, and I think at some point, like, yeah, it's great for me to be a representation of a female golf architect, but like ask these questions to the dudes too. Like ask them what it's like to be a female architect in this industry. Like I'm incredibly privileged to have these platforms, and I don't take it for granted, but I don't think the burden of like addressing the situation should solely fall on, the 8 of us that are out there. Yeah. So thank you for not asking those questions.
I just probably shouldn't have said. I should have just left it. But it frustrates me a wee bit because you need to be It's not there's no difference. It's not a job that needs to be a man or a female. It's just
Yeah.
there's no difference.
Yeah.
Like it's frustrating.
But also
that
in
is
the
the
same
conundrum
moment,
of the.
like,
Sorry, I've got
yeah,
something weird going on
yeah.
with my.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, but in the same moment, like, it's our responsibility to continue to address these disparities in the industry, and not only golf architecture, but like head professionals, superintendents, GMs, like caddies. We need to say it out loud to make it, known and real, but without placing the burden of fixing that on those few women who are actually in those spaces.
I think the natural incline of having the people like yourself and Angela Moser, and there was obviously a number of previous female architects with recognized work, but it's always been recognized with another man or with a. So giving the space and platform for you guys to inspire a younger generation to be able to then come through, is probably the right way. It's going to be what will happen. That's the exciting thing about what you're doing. You're trailblazing, actually being a solo female architect, which is really cool.
Smashing that grass ceiling.
Bam. Screw the glass. Okay, so always finish with one last question. And my last question is always your top 5 favorite golf courses, and favorite, not the best you've played. Everyone bloody says Pine Valley, Cypress. Yeah, good.
Okay, let's say I have to say Camden Braes is my grandparents' like beautiful dream that created me. So I would love to say Camden Braes because we all have that golf course that, got us on this path that made us love the game so much. I will say Lahinch because I think the Irish are just this incredible embodiment of humility and hospitality and compassion. And Ireland is my favorite place in the world to go to, and Lahinch was the impetus for that. And I love Guinness second most to Lahinch. And living in Canada now, the farther you get away from Dublin, the worse the Guinness gets. So any opportunity I have to go back there, I'll take it. St. Andrews for the obvious reasons, but I think it's just, a really special place that makes us feel tingly. And also just some of the design elements that we alluded to earlier in the episode are just, have stuck with me and really are the foundation of my golf design process. One more, let's say Dantonia Park, downtown Toronto, executive 18-hole par 3 has the potential to impact the way that I envision golf impacting a community. 300,000 people live within a 10-minute walking distance to that golf course. It's right on the subway line. The subway stops in the pro shop. Like, the accessibility to that kind of space in downtown Toronto is exceptional and should really be coveted and protected and stewarded to make sure it's there for many, many years. I think that's it.
Superb. I've been chatting a lot recently. I really think that there's some rubbish 18-hole golf courses out there in cities that could sell off some land, get some cool architect in, have money in the pot, and build something truly special as either a community space or just a 12-hole golf course, 9-hole golf course. You don't, as particularly in cities where life, where you don't have the time, you don't have the 4 hour.
You don't have the land, you don't have the water, you don't have the space. You don't need it really. You give me 100 acres, close to 300,000 people, and we could do something pretty cool.
Amazing.
Well, thank you for organizing this, James. I appreciate it so much, and I had an absolute blast.
Thank you very much, Christine Fraser, for that fantastic interview. It's very rare that I see Jasper with his mind blown, and you managed to do so. So that's a very impressive thing. And I wish you all the best of luck with your future endeavors. If you want to get in touch, it's official Top 100 on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, or even on the YouTube channel, which we're now filming for and adding all the podcasts on. If you can like, share, subscribe on any platform, it means the world to us. And if you want to email me, it's james@top100golfcourses.com. I'm always happy to give a shout out or an interview or whatever you want. I just love hearing from you guys. And please remember, play fast, lunch slow.